A very great welcome to all of you. I hope everybody is doing well in PHP. Now, till now, we have seen how to create a graphical user interface and how we can validate the user input controls like text box with for alphabets, numbers, email ID, etc. Today we are going to see about how we can create a MySQL database and how we can execute queries. Now, as web development involves two parties at least, client and server. Client, which is known as a front end, which is giving us the user interface, and backend is the database or server. For this, I am giving example of ATM application. In the ATM store, we see the user interface for the pin change, withdrawal, balance inquiry, etc. But for the user, the backup sheet, all the customer data of bank is not visible. That is stored on a server, and all the operations are getting performed at the back end on the server. So this is how client server application works. The user is giving command through this user interface and sending a request to the server. Server is finding the answer at the back end and giving the response to the client. In the web development, there may be multiple clients across the internet trying to reach the same server or different server at the same time. Now, whenever the client is accessing one of the application which gives us the user interface, that user sends a request via the internet to the web server, and at the web server, this web server is having its own application server, and that server is comprising of uh, millions of databases. For example, if one user is trying to log into Gmail, so via the internet, we are approaching to the Gmail web services, and the Gmail web services will be having its own server, and at the database, this Gmail server will be having the username, password, security questions, all the log record of this Gmail application usage at this database. So when we try to enter email ID, gives the password, and when we click on OK button, that verifies whether our password is matching with the set password. If it works, then it gives us access to this web server. Otherwise, we get a message that wrong password or invalid username, etc. So here at the left hand side, this is a client side. The client is able to see only the user interface, not able to see a complete database of Gmail server having the email ID, password, security questions, data of all the Gmail clients. That is only maintained at the backend, that is at the server side in the database. Now, this user interface or these clients might be accessing data from the desktop machine, from laptop, from mobile phones, and are requesting to the server for a particular data from the database at the backend storage. Now, the benefits of the web application development involves, because the web development, of course, it will be accessible from the web browser, and web browser is compatible with all the system, and it is a cross platform capability software. It have the elevated security by providing the security checks, and there is a minimum time and cost required while interacting with the web application. Just imagine of thinking any application which just gives us the black and white screen for the user. That will be a tedious one. How we can shop online for the clothes in the black and white screen? So that shopping software is developed as per the web development application, so that we can see how the images are looking like. So these are the benefits of web application development. In today's session we are going to see that till time we have designed the forms, we have designed the different forms with different controls like text box, button, checkbox, list, drop down list, scrolling list, radio button, text area, etc. That user interface, which is of course a client working on the front end, and whatever data we are entering into this user interface has to get stored somewhere at the backend database. That database will be at the server side and will be at the backend. So in this session what we are going to do, we are going to perform both the roles. Like we are going to design a client application having a GUI interface, and we are going to create a database in the MySQL database. And for updating the information from this client machine to the server, we have to connect this front end with the back end. Of course, for the database application, there are multiple softwares like MS Access, MS Excel, MySQL, Postgres, Sybase, etc. So here we are going to use MySQL database. Now why MySQL? Because it is free, easily downloadable, it compiles on all the platforms, it is very fast, reliable and easy to use. So, and importantly, it uses a standard structure query language for performing operations on the database. So, with PHP, we are going to have MySQL database as a backend, and we are going to perform all the database operations by two ways. First one is a MySQLi way, and second one is a PDO, that is PHP data object way. So first of all, we will see all the database operation using MySQLi way. Now for that, what we will be doing, whatever GUI interface we are going to design as a form on the client machine, as a web page in HTML language, we are going to have the MySQL as a backend database software, and we will be connecting this front end with this back end in PHP, and we will be firing the queries from this front end to this MySQL backend by using SQL language. As we are having the MySQL as a backend, now this MySQL might be having number of databases, like for suppose for student, for faculty, then for other stakeholders, then for any particular entity in the project. And each database might consist of number of tables. Like for the student database, there may be table for uh, academic records, then for fees, then for scholarship, then for cultural activities, then for sports details, etc. And each table is actually storing a number of records, and each record is a collection of number of columns, and each column might be having a value, character value, number, string, etc. Database is nothing but like a folder which will be consisting of this table having actual data in the table. Now we have to connect this HTML form to the MySQL database using PHP, and we are going to fire the SQL queries on the backend software, and we are going to provide response to this client again. So for performing all these database operations, first of all, we have to understand what are the three important methods that we are going to need. First important method is mysqli underscore connect. This mysqli underscore connect method is used to connect to the backend database. For example, this mysqli underscore connect way will be having the name of the server and then username and password for this backend database. Here we have to give the name of the server, then username of the backend database and the password of the backend database. And this method in turn returns the object of connection object to us. After establishing a connection, uh, we have to fire a queries. For that, we have a mysqli underscore query method. Here we have to give the object of connection class, and here we have to give the object of the query, which in turn returns the true or false value. If the query gets executed successfully, it will return true, otherwise false. And at the end of the program, we have to close this created connection by using mysqli underscore close, and in bracket we have to give the object of connection class. Now, before starting the execution of database operation, we have to understand that we have to create a database first. So for creating database in MySQL, we know that there is a query create a database, and we have to give the name to database. Now where we are going to see all these operations, that also we are going to see. First of all, we will write a PHP code for creating the backend database first, a folder where we can store the tables having records. So let us try to create a PHP code for creating a database. So start tag is PHP, and as I have said, mysqli underscore connect method in bracket we have to give the name of our server. Now we know that our XAMPP server is running on the local host, so name of our server is local host. So we will be writing over here. If your server resides on another machine, you can give the name of that server, or you can give the IP address of that machine. Now MySQL database is having by default root as a username, and there is an empty password for this. This method returns the object of connection class if it gets successfully connected. So that I have taken onto into the con variable. Now we have to check whether the connection has been established or not. So my SQLi underscore connect, this method requires the name of server and username of the MySQL, that is by default root, and the password which is by default empty. If this gets connected successfully, it will return us the object of connection so that it can be referred further. If that connection gets established successfully, then only we can move further. So we are going to check whether the connection is established successfully or not. For that, we will check if in the $con variable, if it is identical to false, it means it has not been connected, it has returned false value, then we can show an error. We can either show an error by echo message, or we can show the error by using die function, where we can give the message that error could not connect and close the method. If the connection is established successfully, we will move further. Now, we have to create a database first. So I have to form a query of creating database in SQL language. So I am forming the query in one variable, suppose SQL. We have to give the query always in double quotes and end with the semicolon. And for creating database, we have a query create database, and we have to give the name to the database. Suppose I am giving name to the database as employee. Now we have just built a query. Now we have to run the query. So for running the query, we have mysqli underscore query method. In bracket we have to give object of connection class, comma we have to give the name of our query, and the name of our query is $sql. If this query gets executed successfully, it will return true. So I am writing that into if condition. If this returns a true value, I have to show a message that database created successfully. And if not, if there is an error, we can show a message echo error could not create database. After that, at the end, we have to close the connection by mysqli underscore close method in bracket give the object of connection class. Now end the PHP tag. We have to save this file in our regular path of XAMPP htdocs by any name. Suppose I am writing db1.php. Now, make sure our XAMPP control panel is running. Now, we have to check whether the database has been created or not. Now, for monitoring this database operations, as we know that XAMPP is a package having Apache server, MySQL, and support for Perl and PHP language. So, all the compiler, database server, all the functionality is available by this XAMPP single package. Now, this is having MySQL as a backend, and we have to monitor it with the dashboard. Now, in front of MySQL, there is an admin button. Just click over here. It will show the localhost PHP my admin. But now this is giving an error just because our localhost is available at port number 8080. So I have to change over here localhost colon 8080 and hit the enter button. So this is PHP My Admin panel, which is showing a dashboard of our MySQL database. Here by default, all the recent activities will be shown over here. Under the database tab, we can see there are these default databases which are already given. In SQL, we can write the queries and we can fire the queries. In user accounts, we can see the username of our databases, and the password is empty over here. And we can set the privileges as well. Now this is our database. Now here there is no created database. We will minimize this, and we have created this PHP script code for creating database with name employee. and the name of this program is db1.php. Now we have to execute this program on localhost, which is available at 8080. We have to run this program with db1.php, that is file name. It has given the message database created successfully. Now where we can see whether database has been created or not, that we have to see in PHP My Admin dashboard. Now for reflecting the latest changes, we have to refresh the PHP My Admin page, and we have to check whether the database has been created or not. Now you can see over here the employee database is created, which was not available pastly. Here the employee database is available. Now there is no table under this employee. If we click over here, there is no table, and under this employee there is no table. As I said, database is nothing but just a folder or directory where we can create our multiple tables. Now, our next task will be to create a table under the database. Database is just a container or a folder. Now, moving on, we have just created a database. Now, how we can create a table in SQL? For that, we have a syntax create table. We have to give name to the table, and the number of columns, whatever you want to create, we have to mention like name of the column, data type, comma, the next column name, its data type, and you can have n number of column in the parenthesis of table name query. Close the query and give the semicolon. Now we will write the query in the same code. For that, we have already created a database. Now we will just move on with the next query of creating a table. Now this part will remain as it is because we already have created a connection. Now here in this code we had mentioned that this employee table will be created under MySQL having this username and password. But now for creating table, as I said, database is a collection of table. So here, while creating a table and further SQL queries will run by mentioning the fourth parameter of name of the database. Now here what we have mentioned under root username and password, there is an employee database under which I want to create a table, and the name of the table is suppose emp, and what columns I want, that column I will be mentioning over here id, uh, id column, and we have to give the data type of this id column. Suppose this is a number, that's why I am mentioning int. Then I have to give the next column name, which will be a varchar of suppose 30 characters wide. Then I have to give the suppose salary column, which is having suppose integer number, and close the round bracket, close the double quotes of a query, and give the semicolon. That's it. We have just builded a query. We will run the query with the same connection object and giving the name of the SQL variable over here. If it gets successfully executed, we will give message table created successfully. Otherwise, we will mention could not create a table. Save the code, and now we will see, we will execute our code on the localhost db1.php. As the code is in the same file, I am just refreshing the page. It has given the message as table created successfully. Let's go to the PHP My Admin. Now here under employee there is a table is created with EMP name. Just click on EMP. We can see there are three columns: ID, name and salary. But there are no records yet. So this is how we have created a table under the database. Moving on, now what we can do, as there is a empty table, we have to write an SQL query for inserting a new record into the created table. For that, we have a insert into query. Syntax is insert into table name, give the name of columns, which record you want to display, which columns you have in your table, and in in front of values word, give the values to the respective column names in the parenthesis. Now we will make a change in the same code as we have already created a table. Now table was created, database was created under MySQL over here, and the table is created under the database. Now further queries like insert, update, delete, select query, all these queries will of course run on table only. So what we have to do, we have to make sure that in the queries there will be table name where we are going to fire a query. Now we have to keep this database name over here for rest of the our query execution, because it may be possible that there may be number of databases having the same table name, that is EMP, but under which and on which EMP table we want to fire a query, the EMP table which is under employee database. That's why we will keep this line as it is. And now we have to insert a record in a EMP table. So rest of the pattern of connection and checking for establishment of connection successfully or not, that pattern will remain same. We have to just build a query for inserting a new record into a table. Now syntax for insert is insert into our table name is EMP, and we have to give all the column names for inserting a record. We know that the column name are ID, name, and salary. Give the name as it is, the way we have created, and close the column name bracket over here, and then give values word, and in front of that again put a table for inserting a value. For example, ID is suppose 10, comma, name of employee. Now it is a string or varchar data type. That's why name, include the name in a single quote. Suppose name of the employee is ABC and salary of the employee is again in integer number. So I am writing it without quotes. Now close the parenthesis and double quotes, completion of complete query and semicolon. We will run the query again with mysqli underscore query connection object and the name of the query. Now here, once the successful execution goes well for inserting a record, then we have to give a message inserted record successfully. If it generates an error, we have to give error message could not insert a record. Save the code. Now we have to run the program on the local host. Just refresh because it is the same program. Inserted record successfully message appeared over here. Now we will check into the PHP My Admin panel just by refreshing Over here, I can see which was blank table over here. Now I can see ID is 10, name is ABC, and salary is 50,000. So we have one record inserted into our table. Moving on, we have seen how to insert a record in a table. Now, next important query of SQL is update. Many of the time, suppose we have inserted a record or we have multiple records and we want to change the details if there is a spelling mistake or something change in a record. So we will not delete a complete row and then we will insert a new row, not like that. We will update the existing record with the update query. Syntax of update query is update table name, set column name is equal to value, and multiple columns you can set where we can give the condition. Now suppose for this we will see our database first. Now here suppose ID is 10, name is ABC, and salary is 50,000. Now suppose we want to change the salary of the employee whose ID is 10. So we will update this record by writing a code. Now the connection and everything will remain same. We will just change the query, and for here we have to write update name of table is emp set what we want to change, the salary column. So I will change salary is equal to new salary. Suppose I want to give 80,000, where whose salary we want to change. We want to change the salary of a employee whose ID is equal to 10. Complete the query, end with semicolon, execute the query by using MySQL underscore query. If it gets inserted successfully, sorry, if it gets executed successfully, show message updated record successfully, otherwise could not update a record. Save the code. We will execute the our file on the local host. Message is shown updated record successfully. We will go to the dashboard. We will refresh the page and see the salary is updated from 50 to 80,000. Now we have inserted updated record in a table. Now next query is, many of the times we need to delete a record or remove a record from the table. So for that we have a delete query. Delete from table name, where we have to give the condition. We can mention that condition by giving the column name and its respective value. Now as of now in our code we just have one record only, so we can just delete this one record whose ID is 10 or whose name is ABC by giving any of the condition. The rest of the program will be as it is. We will just change the query, delete from table name is emp, where column name is suppose id is equal to 10. If you want to give the column name is equal to, and if it is a string value we have to give that in a single quote. So it means I want to delete a record from emp table where the name of the employee is ABC. We will run the query and we will display a message as deleted record successfully. If it is an generating an error, we can show a message could not delete a record. Save the code and we will run our file on the local host, and it is showing deleted record successfully. We will check into the dashboard by refreshing our PHP My Admin panel. There seems no record and ID name salary is empty table. Here under employee, we are seeing EMP table, but there are no records in this EMP table. So in this session, we have seen the client server concept, which is front end and back end concept, and we can create a graphical user interface, and we can create a database in MySQL, and the SQL, that is structured query language, is used to fire a query on the available record under the table which is available in the database. I hope you have understood the session. See you in the next session. Thank you.